it's Stewart A. Swerdlow.
And Janet Diane Moya Swerdlow.
And this is the Expansions News Podcast for the last week, actually last few days of September 2015. And as you know, I am back from a very long trip, 3 continents. And instead of my actually doing the news for you, I'd like to do a recap of my trip. And first thing is, I want to thank Richard Williams at New Dimensions TV for documenting the entire trip in all countries. And I hope that you will go to his site at newdimensionstv.com and you'll see all the information there. And I also want to thank Madeline Namro from speedstar.com.pl for arranging my trip, and you should also go to her website at speedstar.com.pl for my future upcoming trips and seminars, and I think even registrations there. Not sure about that. Anyway, I also want to thank the people in London, and I hope I get all of them. Renata, Anuradha, Piotr, and Andrew, who helped and assisted me the entire time I was in the UK. And I did great interviews with Miles Johnston, and that should be posted shortly on his website. And the interesting thing about London was, as I mentioned in some of my reports, there were no English people. They were Polish people, Chinese people, South Americans, Eastern European, you name it, no English people. Even in the restaurants, the servers, no English. So UK, I guess that's the end of your empire for sure. Then I went on to Prague, and I want to thank there my TV and movie producer, Karol Kuma, who did all my podcasts from Poland for me and helped us navigate through Prague in very heavy traffic and through the countryside of the Czech Republic until we got to Poland. And in Poland, I was in Carpathia, the Carpathian Mountains, which are very beautiful. And there, and I'm sure that some of you have seen the postings of the 1,000-year-old Norwegian Viking church that was reassembled, taken apart in southern Norway, brought to southwestern Poland, which was then part of Germany, and reassembled without any nails. Nobody knows how it was put up or how it stays up, but there it is. It's called the Wang Church, W-A-N-G, sounds Chinese, but is actually the name of a Prussian general who moved it for the Emperor of Prussia, who commanded him to move it. I also want to thank in Poland Ava and her daughter, who hosted me in the hotel and dinner, and also a special thank you to Barbara Walski for her translation services and her help in making my stay in Poland very comfortable. In Germany, I did many videos and interviews, which I'm sure you may have seen, and for those, I want to thank Rosina Kaiser, Joe Conrad, Petra Maria, and Stefan at Bewusst TV, who have asked me to come back to work in Munich and even in Salzburg. And also a special thanks to the Swiss Miss who came to see me. She knows who she is. I shall not name her. But the Swiss Miss also was the one who advised me that the very ground that my hotel was on was Waldensian territory. There was a village near the hotel in Mörfelden, Germany, near Frankfurt, which was a colony of the Waldensians who escaped persecution in Italy and France. And so I'm very grateful to be able to have seen that, and I believe you posted some of those pictures on there. And look for 2016, I will be working with Joe Conrad, Rosina Kaiser, at Bewusst TV, Stefan and Petra Maria to do seminars in Munich and Salzburg.
Well, of course, you'll be back in Berlin.
I'll be back in Berlin next month.
Yeah, the middle of October.
And they will be there also to film me and interview me. They just requested that today.
And they'll be back in Poland as well.
I'll be back in Poland. Yes, I'll be in actually Warsaw, Wrocław, and Poznan. It's my tour of Poland. But Poznan is the big seminar. Then on to Turkey. I mentioned in many podcasts, Istanbul is a city of over 22 million people. That's quite amazing. And you know, there are some countries that don't have that kind of population. And of course, all 22 million were in my hotel or in the street in front. And as you may have seen on New Dimensions TV podcast from Istanbul, there was a demonstration, a riot in front of my hotel after I arrived there. Probably not because of me, I hope. But there were tear gas canisters thrown, there was clubbings by the police, there were people arrested, the ambulances. It was quite a mess, and it went on for a number of hours. In Turkey, I want to thank Farah Yorduzu, who is a well-known author in Turkey and a UFO researcher who facilitated my stay and conference there, and also to thank Ali, her friend from the UFO magazine, with whom I did an interview, and I believe that's on Facebook posted as well. And
It's also posted on our site.
And also posted on our site, so please check all that out. And I also want to thank especially my Romanian friends who drove 12 hours from Galați, Romania, just to see me, and we had made my time pleasant while I was there. And also to thank Wael from Palestine, who was a well-known Palestinian leader there, who was also helpful in advising me while I was in Istanbul and in Jordan, and invited me actually to Nablus, the capital of Palestinian Authority, in 2016. In Turkey, I found out there are many underground caverns and tunnels. Some of them are alien, meaning not from this world. Some are reptilian, and some are military. They're extensive underground network, which eventually I would like to go back and explore some of those myself. And by the way, the Turkish people told me that they have no problem with the Kurdish population or the Armenians, and in fact, in the past there have been Kurdish prime ministers of Turkey, so they have no issue with them at all. A lot of what we hear on the news is hyped up. They do have an issue with their own prime minister, Erdogan, who is trying to, in his own way, recreate the Ottoman Empire, impose strict Islamic laws on aspects of Turkish life, and the people are rejecting that. They're really not interested in religion or politics. They just want to have a free, happy life. Onward to Jordan and the Palestinian area. I learned a lot while I was in Amman about the situation there politically and religiously. And I will discuss more about that at Friday night news part of my conference in October. That will be October 9, I believe, is the Friday night, so you want to be there. I want to say a special thank you to another Farah, the Jordanian Farah, who helped me in Amman, and our friends Maha and Rania, and also the people at the Movenpick Dead Sea Resort, who were very accommodating and helped facilitate my filming and my mud bath. It was interesting to do the report near, as close as I could get to the Lisan Peninsula, because they don't allow people to go on there without special permission and special equipment. They claim that there are sinkholes opening up in the part that I wanted to go to in the peninsula, and that there's potash equipment being used to excavate potash, Dead Sea, etc. It's interesting they allow those people with heavy equipment to go in the sinkhole areas, but me on foot with a light camera was not allowed. So there's obviously some other reason going on there. Also, those of you who do go to the Jordanian side of the Jordan River, and you go to the baptism site where St. John the Baptist was supposedly baptized Christ, it's kind of a fake area, because in the 2,000 years since that happened, the Jordan River has changed direction and shape and all kinds of things, and no one knows where the original part was or where the actual baptismal site is, so it's just kind of like a setup. The Palestinian territory is very difficult to get to. We went through 3 checkpoints. They make it difficult, but if you go from the Israeli side, it's even worse, because they are very paranoid about who goes in and out of there. So even though Palestine allegedly has its own little country now, it is very closely monitored and controlled by the Israelis and the Jordanians, so they make life very difficult. I continued on to Qatar. I went through Iran, Azerbaijan, and even southern Russia, and I'll speak more about that in the conference. The interesting thing when I met with people in Jordan, Turkey, Poland, and Germany, all of these people in these countries told me they would prefer to see a new Soviet Union and have contact with that rather than the United States, which was quite shocking to me, especially from the Germans and the Polish people. I was very surprised, but they all said it. So I'm going to New York this week, so I will not be on podcast next week. And then after that is, of course, our conference, and then I'm off to Europe and Asia, and then to South America and Spain. So it'll be very, very busy rest of the year. And next year, the trend continues with trips possible to Japan, Germany, Poland, UK, Iceland, Italy, Middle East, and Canada. So I don't know when I'll even see you anymore.
I don't know. Well, at least we have Skype.
And you have my picture that you can,
There you go.
talk to.
Okay. All right. Anything else you wanted to say?
No, I'll just listen to you now.
All right. Well, I have a few stories. Not a lot this week. I've had some really good ones while you were gone, however. But I wanted to start off, of course, with the Pope's visit. That's the big news.
You know, he never invited me to lunch while he was here.
Well, shame on him.
I know.
And maybe because you're in the Midwest instead of on the East Coast.
Well, you could have sent the Pope plane to pick me up.
Yeah. Well, speaking of picking him up, you have heard what he's being driven around in.
That little Fiat.
Yeah, a modest Fiat 500, which I don't even know how many Americans have such a car.
You don't see Fiats here.
No, maybe they brought that in special for him, for all we
Probably.
know. So anyway, so they said he was driving around in a modest Fiat 500 while the president travels in his 1 million armored vehicle. So of course they want to show the difference in how humble he is versus
Really, he lives in the frickin' Vatican. How humble
versus
is he?
the U.S. is, consumer driven.
Yeah.
And of course you do know what they call the president's vehicle.
The Obama-mobile?
They call it the Beast.
No, that's who's in it.
I call it the Beast.
Oh.
And it apparently has 8-inch thick armor plating on its doors. So
Huh.
anyway, the Pope is being praised for his humble choice of vehicles.
Oh, it's so ridiculous.
And calling it refreshing and down to earth and all this.
Yeah, and then he goes back to his $1 billion apartment at the Vatican.
Right. And then, of course, you heard about the little 5-year-old girl that got through his barricade and presented him with a yellow T-shirt that read, Pope Rescue DAPA, so the legalization would be your blessing. So apparently, he has all these barricades, he's got all the security, but a 5-year-old girl gets through.
Because it was all staged.
Yes, and they even said that basically that they planned it for months and that they flew her and her family in.
Oh, they did?
They said that on the news,
Really?
yeah. And I don't even remember which state she's actually from. But the Deferred Action for Parents of Americans, that's what it stands for, the DAPA, this shirt. It's a program that would extend deportation protection to the parents of U.S. citizens. And so in other words, she was born here legally, but her parents were not here legally.
I see.
So therefore her parents can be deported, but she can stay. And so it's interesting, however, that she's asking the Pope to help with what's going on here in the U.S., which is inferring that he has something to do with legalizations here in the U.S., correct?
Yes.
All right. Anyway, apparently the U.S. immigration had halted the program after 26 states, including Texas, sued to block this program. So the states are saying no to what the federal government is trying to put in. And then did you know that Pope Francis is releasing a pop rock album in November?
No.
Maybe in honor of your birthday.
Is it on my birthday?
I don't know. And this was interesting because there was a couple articles, but one of them it said it will release a PROG-rock-infused album. So when I went on the site to see what PROG meant, it said pop rock. So PROG to me refers to programming.
Oh, yes.
So that was like supposedly a slip, but I don't know.
That makes sense.
Anyway, it's called Wake Up, and it's going to be focusing on issues like peace, dignity, the environment concerns, and helping those most in need. So again, he's trying to put this global program in. It's going to be in Italian, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So watch for that.
What about the Germanic-speaking countries?
Doesn't talk about that in this article. At least this is where they're going to start, so we'll find out. Anyway, and then Donald Trump is now going on record saying he doesn't believe in climate change.
Well, good for him.
Which is interesting. Well, he's a pawn, we always remember.
No, but that's true, though.
He's a pawn. He's a trump card.
He's a trump card.
He's a trump card.
That's right.
So anyway, Trump says that people in the 1920s thought the Earth was cooling, which I never heard that. Did you?
Well, I wasn't around in the 1920s.
Well, that's why he's talking about it, maybe. Now it's called global warming, which is implying that subsequent climate science is nonsense. And he says...
he's an odd one, because some things he says are bizarre and some things are right.
Truth is always mixed with fiction. Fiction, that is your lie sandwich. So, he's just another one of the global handlers people.
But you know what? Everybody I speak to, they say they want to vote for him.
Well, so he's their trump card, right? But he still is, like I said, perpetuating a program for the government or the global handlers. So again, I don't believe anything he says other than it's just to keep things kind of mixed up again. But anyway, he claims that the government is attempting to solve a problem that does not exist in any major fashion. He says that Obama thinks it's the #1 problem of the world, but he thinks it's very low on the list.
That Obama thinks global change is the...
Global climate change is, yes. And of course, we've heard about how the Pope is going to say, because of consumerism here in the U.S., that, you know, it's our issue more than the rest of the world's. And he says we have...
Don't worry about the 1.4 billion Chinese who are polluting the earth.
No, come over here. Anyway, he says that we have a bigger problem, and then interestingly enough, he says that global warming was created by and for the Chinese.
Oh, there you go.
So, we'll see what happens. Anyway, and then we go on to Mars, because now they're saying that there is a Stonehenge that has been spotted on Mars, Stonehenge-style rocks.
Is that the secret announcement that they're going to make tomorrow?
Well, we don't know because it's secret. But there's claiming that there's a bizarre circular stone formation on the red planet which resembles the iconic pagan site.
I see.
And of course, then there are the experts who say that some stone circles can form naturally.
Of course,
that
everything's
kind of things
natural.
before.
The Empire State Building is a natural formation.
There you go. And now it says it's the latest in a long line of strange objects spotted in Mars. I mean, I think while you were gone, maybe there was a floating spoon, and I think you were here. There was a woman, and just all kinds of things. Yeah, the woman was before you left.
Right.
And then, of course, we have the night of September 27th and 28th, the rare supermoon eclipse.
Woohoo!
And it says that means a full moon that appears larger because it's at perigee, which is the closest point of its orbit with the Earth.
Yeah, but it's cloudy here. We won't be able to see it.
The last one was in 1982, and they say that the next one will take place in 2033.
Ooh.
Now, the end time believers say that apparently this is the latest of a tetrad, which means 4 consecutive total lunar eclipses, which means that troubled times are come.
Which we reported on our prophecy webinar months ago.
So if you haven't seen our prophecy webinar pay-per-view, that's one of our most popular ones, you might want to do that. It says that these total lunar eclipses were each separated by 6 lunar months that took place on Jewish holidays.
And it's also a Muslim holiday.
Yep. And it says Christian ministers have theorized that the sequence has earth-shaking significance, and of course they noticed the tetrads that took place in key years in history, including 1492, which was the Jewish expulsion from Spain, in 1948 the Mideast War began. And we talked about all of this in our prophecy webinar.
That's why I got out of the Middle East before that happened.
There you go. It says that there will be world-shaking events that will happen between April of 2014 and October of 2015, and we will be talking about this more in our conference in October, and Gary, the numbers guy, will be talking about financial collapse, as well as the numbers that the global handlers hide in plain sight. So Gary's presentation should be very germane to the topic at hand. And then Germany says is actually in a state of siege because of all the migrants.
I said it.
It said that Merkel was cheered when she opened the floodgates to migrants, but now there are gangs of men roaming the streets.
I told you.
Young German women are being told to cover up.
Wait till they start attacking buildings and blowing things up.
It says that thousands of economic migrants were posing as war refugees to reach Europe. Well, that we already knew. Plus, it's embedded with other people, so who knows?
Right.
Now, David Cameron said this week that Europe must send failed asylum claimants back to their countries.
Right.
I don't think that's going to be so easy.
Exactly.
It's like, I bet when you went in the different countries, did they just open the door and let you go in? Or did they search you and ask, who are you, where are you going? Let's see all your identification.
Especially in London, when I went to immigration and there's an Indian woman asking me what I'm doing. I'm like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, well, that's my point here is we have to show all our proper identification. We have to be documented. We have all these rules and regulations. We just don't know who was let into these countries.
Well, by the time I came back from... where was I? Philippines, and I landed in San Francisco, and there's a Chinese immigration officer. I mean, she couldn't even speak English, and she's asking me what I'm doing in the U.S.
Point being is that, and I have had people from Canada saying that even when they leave Canada, they have our question, and when they try to get back in their own country, the questioning is even worse.
Right, and now Canada has a law where they can expel their own citizens if they even have the ability to get citizenship.
So here are these people just walking in, so changes people. And then it's also been reported that women have been saying that rape and child abuse were rife in the refugee camps in Germany. So that's going to continue
What a surprise.
to explode in everybody's faces. So we'll keep our eye on this story. And then we have the Department of Homeland Security that is creating a brain chip phone along with Boeing, which generally manufactures jetliners and fighter planes.
So you're going to put a jet in your head?
I don't know. Apparently they're working with Homeland Security and Boeing to develop a phone that has a chip in the people's brains.
Oh, wait a minute. The phone has a chip or they put it in your head?
They're talking about a brain chip for self-destructing black smartphones that can learn its owner's behavior. So it says the system is going to use motion sensors, microphones, and GPS to monitor its owners by learning how they speak, move, and even type. And if there's unusual behavior, security forces can be alerted, and then the phone can self-destruct.
Oh, that's wonderful, especially while you're on it.
But what's interesting, I have these little iPhone things, and they also, I think, are working to...
Well, of course they have a chip in them.
Yes, but the point is if I use certain phrases, that word pops up. So it's also learning
Well,
my
it's even on
behavior.
the computer. If I look up an airline, then for the next month I get advertisements on my email from
Right,
them.
exactly. So it's all learning our behavior. So even though they're talking about this as self-defense, it's happening to your average citizen on the street basically right now. Then last week you weren't here, but I talked about ayahuasca and how I believe that's going to be the next drug to be legalized, as you're going to say
You
it's
really
for.
think so?
Yep, I think it's going to be legalized for religious use, which will eventually, of course, feed into New World religion. And I'm talking about the dangers of it now, because whether you believe it or not, it's coming down the pike. Well, anyway, there was a backpacker, 24 years old, from New Zealand, who died after drinking ayahuasca in Peru, supposedly under a shaman. And I'm telling you, any shaman worth their salt is not going to share this with any
real shamans
person.
are not going to do that.
No, they're not going to share this with people. But supposedly it's said to purge toxins. And in Peru, it's not regulated. It is legal down there. And it's popular among tourists. And that's the truth. People are going down there more and more on these ayahuasca tours. So again, be mindful of your choices, because your choices can come back to bite you, and sometimes in very bad ways. So yes, it can be lethal. Now here's an interesting story. That's now a fashion doll. She's been called like a normal Barbie that comes with menstrual pads.
Why?
Because I think it has to do with blood ritual, which is going to be coming along. But they're saying that this is actually designed by a young man and his mother.
Of course. Who
claims periods are such an integral part of a woman's life. It's just a healthy part of it. It shouldn't be swept under the rug. Let's do everything else that's flaunted around for the world to see, right? So the blood.
Why do they make Bob, the Barbie dolls poop and pee too?
There was a thing that circulated on the internet. It's probably been a year or two at least by now, that showed a young woman actually eating her tampon. It was so disgusting.
What?
Yeah, it was disgusting. I used
sick
tampon.
people, sick.
Very sick. But listen to this. This was interesting to me. Apparently there was a campaign launched in 2014 on Kickstarter, and it raised over $500,000 to make these dolls. Now that does that sound right? Do you think we could put our stuff out there and get $500,000?
I'd be lucky if we got $5.
Well, there you go. So how in the world can they get $500,000 to make a doll like this? All right,
That's a setup.
Something's not right here. And he's saying that girls should realize menstruation is normal. Give parents a fun.
So is throwing up and blowing your nose. You don't have the dolls to do that either.
Well, they might soon. That's a fun way, so it's not so serious and scary. So, I think that there's, again, a lot more going on than what people want to
Just ridiculous.
think about. Yeah. Now listen, speaking of ridiculous, listen to this. And this one, I'm not surprised. I've kind of been waiting for this. I've not said anything before. But now it says that dog plastic surgery is gaining popularity. Dog plastic surgery is gaining popularity.
Does that dog mean like ugly women or just like the animal?
I'm talking about dogs, the animal. Especially Botox and eye enhancement surgery. So once you've done yourself a billion times, I guess you can do your dog. And of course it's starting out in Korea.
Well, you get out now. Ugly dog, you go.
Anyway, I thought, well, that's an interesting thing. And again, none of it surprises me. And we keep warning you about these kind of things. But you know what?
You can't make this up.
It's going to continue to get more and more bizarre. So
it's already bizarre.
more and more bizarre. It can always get worse. That's one thing I learned very
Just
early in
can't
my
imagine.
life.
It's be like living on like the Addams Family episode.
Well, kind of, yep. And that's one thing, in fact, I want to bring that up because I had talked about these models. There was one that they showed who had Down syndrome, and she's now a high fashion model. Then there was one which I reported on when we were gone. I don't remember the name of her disease, but she has no hair, no teeth, no eyebrows, no eyelashes, and a large head. And anyway, so I said,
Maybe she's an alien.
well, that was what we're talking about, is why these people, now they're turning into high fashion models, and like we talked about, these are the alien genetics that are coming out that are going to get you used to more and more, and even like the bald heads, you know, which they say is for cancer, but again, that's more like an alien type of characteristic. So I'm going to watch for more of these things to come up. So that's my news, but I also want to be sure to invite you to our October conference. You have very little time now to sign up for that. We have Mary Sutherland coming, who's a paranormal researcher, tour director, and author from Wisconsin, who's going to be talking about the red-haired giants of North America. And I was talking to Stewart that I have found so many resources lately that are talking about giants all over the earth and all kinds of, things, unrefuted evidence. You just cannot say this does not exist anymore.
No, it's true. Even the Bible talks about
Yeah,
that.
so a lot of this information is now coming forward, so I'm very fascinated to hear what she's going to be saying about all of that. Plus, she's bringing artifacts never before seen
Is she going to bring a real red-haired giant?
in North America. Well, I hear she might have like a petrified finger or something. So I don't know what else she's bringing, but it's going to be interesting, I know that. Excuse me, Steve Spirason will be talking about the Magdalene frequency and the ISIS, which I know you're going to be talking about more about that as well, the ISIS on the Friday night news portion. And we have, of course, Gary the Numbers Guy coming. We have Christopher Garetano, who is bringing the Montauk Chronicles.
Oh, good.
So you're going to be watching that with Christopher and Stewart, plus you'll be able to ask Christopher and Stewart all the questions you want about that. And, of course, we will be having a panel of all our guests where you will be able to ask more questions. So we've got a good group coming from all over the world and all over the U.S. So if you want to join us, this is the time.
You're running out of time, so hurry up and
That's
sign
right.
up immediately.
Right, like our Facebook page, be sure and join our membership, and anything else you have to add.
Well, I'll keep the rest as a surprise for the conference.
All right, that's coming up very, very soon.
But there's something you should all know.
Yeah, well, we're not even going to give you a hint because you got to come. All right, with that said then, I guess we want to thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Well, I won't, but you will.
I will.
Bye for now.
Bye.